Так, ну что, ребята, снова здравствуйте. Не прошло и года. Трансляция уже началась. Я не знаю. В общем, сделаем как-то так. Будет ли вам слышно? Для этого нам надо включить звук, наверное, да? Для этого нам надо будет включить звук господину.
How you guys doing today? Hard, but it was good. It was good. This is my good friend. Go check out his music.
Ну, он все вещает по-английски, господа.
What else we got for him?
Он все вещает по-английски. Я не знаю, стоит ли нам это вообще смотреть. У него, видимо, своя движуха по этому поводу. Насколько музыка их соответствует ютубовским предпочтениям, возможно ли такое, то за его музыку нам прилетит ай-яй-яй по попе. Виталий, переводи. Да-да-да, если б я знал. Он так быстро болтает про это.
You ready for the day? Ready to hear a couple things? DMCA is the lamest thing ever. It is what it is. Thank you to everybody for the bit subs, everything like that. I'm gonna have alerts muted today, obviously.
Можно мне как-то полноэкранный режим сделать?
Sazabi and Chamroons, that's right. Too sad.
Дядька, блин. Короче, заставил подписаться.
What's a good pump up one, Indigo?
Прося переведи, только у меня 3 по English. Короче, он говорит, мужики, все хорошо.
DMCA.
Играть будут все прекрасно.
How do I feel about today?
Такой милый мужик, прям как я, только чуть больше волос.
I'm excited. I can't wait to hear stuff.
И у меня нет очков. Надо заставить его говорить по-нашему. Да, надо переобучить этого пацанчика. Давай, дядька, вещай нам что-нибудь прекрасное и удивительное.
We're just rolling through stuff. You already know? What? What if I don't know anything? Call to arms or lore? We already played those. Lower resist, unstrike, runeward bow. That'd be fun.
Что-то про страйк говорит. Типа, если кто-то будет его стримить, он индюрит страйк. Это мне страшно. Феникс топ, это лама. Якобы он имеет отношение к каким-то разработчикам, вернее, каким-то к Blizzard разработчикам, и у него есть информация по поводу грядущего обновления в Diablo 2 Resurrected. Это он на вопросы отвечает? Я не знаю, честно. Блин. Мужики, я не знаю. Скорее всего, надо будет это вырубать. Потому что нифига он не разработал. Ну как? У него своя тематика стрима, поэтому мне кажется, что... Кем-то он созванивается, что ли? Что за тайна черного экрана? А, во. Вот теперь, наверное, это разработчики, да? Бригады, которые Яков или Убивака делает, все уже давно на его канале были. Diablo 2 Resurrected Develop Update, то есть апгрейд Diablo 2.
We're going to be hosting the developer update today. We got a lot of fun stuff right here. We've got Adam.
У кого с английским все хорошо, мужики?
And
We
and
have two
Matthew,
instances of me.
two
You may
instances
ignore-
of Adam.
You may ignore the other one. That one is just driving this presentation. That's all.
Моя,
Two
если честно,
Adams
не
today.
понимает,
Wow,
что он говорит.
so much. Yeah, so they're going to be diving into all of the fun stuff. If you guys haven't seen the blog post yet, !patch, it kind of goes through and talks about some of the fun balance changes and adjustments that they're going to do. And today we're going to dive into the depths of those and look a little further at what's going on. So I'll throw it over to you guys to kick it off here.
Cool. Hello. We've met before. Different hairstyle, but I'm
Me too.
Rob Gallerani, design lead on Diablo II Resurrected, and Matt.
Yeah, hello. My name is Matthew Cedarquist. I'm a senior game producer for Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Какой-то продюсер. Запомните их лица, ребят. Если что-то кто-то из них накосячит, это именно они будут в этом виноваты.
The big thing here is, well, one of the big things here is we've made a lot of changes, but that wasn't the kind of the story when we first came out. Like the last time we were talking, we were like, we had a lot of feedback like, hey, when is there going to be new stuff? It was like authenticity was our goal, right? We really wanted to target like the experience you remember playing. And in fact, I remember we were watching you play actually, and that morning you had played the original game, and then maybe an hour later you switched over and played D2R, and there were things you did that didn't even miss a beat, and we're like, okay, good. However,
Говорят про баланс,
now
да?
that we've got a lot more, stability and other things like that, I think it's time for ladder, right? And so with ladder, you guys all know what ladder is, you and your fans all know what ladder is, but
Саш, мне тоже непонятно, если честно. Я с английским вообще не силен.
And it's something we're continuously working on, right? So the big thing I want to kind of talk about before we even get to ladder is PTR. So, right, like everything we're going to go over in this whole roundtable is subject to change, right? And so stuff will get PTR, and it will probably be pointed out to us how it was wrong or right or great or unbalanced or powerful or whatever. Right now, we're thinking 4 months for the duration. Once again, that's what we're thinking. We're leaning towards it pretty heavily. This is kind of after a long history of the different changing ladder seasons over the course of when D2R first came out to, today, right? Like it kind of finally settled into a cadence. But if you look at, D3, that's a different cycle than, 4 months.
Right.
3 months is too quick. Like, yes, there are certain individuals, maybe someone in this room, where 3 months is fine. Tear through it, that's great. But we didn't want to just go 3 months. We didn't want to go 6 months because 6 months just was too long, and 5 is kind of like
It's just an awkward number, right?
Not when you have a 12-month year, right?
Yeah. I think 4 is great. I've heard from everything I've heard, people love 4 months. That seems to be, I'd say 80% of people.
4 месяца будет сезон. Это немного.
8 is pretty good.
80 is
Это немного.
80 is amazing in this
world.
world.
So yeah, once again, like feedback from you, feedback from the community will help us solidify that. But I think we're pretty good on that one. And then what comes with ladder? So you will get to make new ladder characters, right? So there's kind of the ones you expect. There's your hardcore, your non-hardcore, and then there's expansion and non-expansion. So 4. However, there will also be some exclusive
6 говорит
ladder
слишком долго.
So there'll be new
А я
themes
считал,
in there.
что 6 вполне было бы
And
достаточно.
that should be pretty much what you've expected from
Размовляем на иностранщине, да. Все как вы любите, мужики, все как вы любите. Вы любите играть в игру на английском языке. Пожалуйста, переводите.
End of the season.
Right.
And what happens to those exclusive rune
Because,
words?
those things are moving over, and also we've got our stash tabs that are now we have money those to move over, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was something we actually talked about for a little while, and one of the options was, we'll just keep giving you more tabs every time the season rolls over. It's like, well,
We like that.
that's not very future-proof. Although there will totally be
В смысле, а что с микрофоном не так, бро?
The other one is like, just don't roll them over. It'd be like, look, make sure you get stuff out of your shared stash before the season ends, or you lose it forever. And it's like,
Понял.
okay, well, that's
Себя
kinda
тише
part
сделай.
two. And so we kind of fell somewhere in the middle. So what will happen is, let's say you have an item in your shared stash of a, hardcore ladder character.
Right.
End of the season, next day starts, or next ladder starts. You'll come on, that ladder character is now converted to a non-ladder character.
В английском языке, пожалуйста, переводите.
A new tab. So you'll see 3 new tabs, but they're going to be withdrawal only. The other one so it's essentially, hey, look, you have a whole season to get stuff out of that shared stash onto your characters.
Понял. Себя
And
тише
then,
сделай.
and hopefully you cleared it all out or done something with it before the next rollover. Let's say you have an item in your shared stash of a, and so in this way, you don't have to worry about logging on at the right second, end of the season, or to get your next day starts or next ladder starts. I mean, let's be honest, if we did make that rule, people would just make a bunch of dummy characters right before the last day anyway and throw their stuff in. So it's like, no, let's keep it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Nice way to just have the remove only tab there.
And then as for those ladder exclusive rune words, so season, well, I don't know, we call it season 1? Is it season 1 again? The next season comes out, there'll be new rune words in there. Okay. You can make them in, that season. When that season ends, any of those items that have the rune word on them move to non-ladder. Right now, the idea is that now the non-ladder, you can then make those rune words.
Oh, wow, okay.
Single player will also make those, because in the next ladder, there will now be
тоже так могу
new.
делать. Wow, okay.
Wow, so you guys are planning for every ladder to have new rune words.
yeah, да.
And then
Whoa. Every is a strong word that you're committing us to. But,
that's what I heard.
But trickling them out, kind of like trickling them out over, several seasons is kind of the goal. This way, it's like, hey, we got a bunch of rune words planned. You're not going to get them all on this next ladder.
Gotcha.
They'll kind of be a little bit. So it's kind of like
every ladder.
Yeah. So there's a new reason to come back every ladder, other than just a new race.
Okay, and then you were saying they'll also roll into single player. Does this happen as soon as that ladder is released, or once that ladder ends?
That's a good question. We're
perfect. All right.
Once that ladder ends, most likely.
But most likely, that's it'll
Once
just
that
be
ladder ends.
that to happen.
Perfect.
I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. So now we kind of get into like the philosophy around like why we made these changes, what made the changes, and things like that. So kind of above all, before we can get to these bullets, like the goal is not, okay, we're going to nerf all these classes that people think are OP.
Right.
Why would we do that? That's not fun. People are having fun. And the other thing is, when we talk about balance, the word balance even is loaded. Like even you see the little picture, it's 2 scales.
Right.
The idea of, oh, look, I can play however I want, and it will be equal to anyone else playing however they want.
Yeah, that's a terrible picture you chose.
No,
there. I mean,
no, like, it's a very good slide. The deck is great. That's not nice, but you know what I mean? But like, we're not here to just be like, you can play however you want and every way wins and it's all perfectly even.
Right.
But really it's more of a like, we really like the player choice and really like that people get to kind of explore and get creative with their builds. But when a particular build is so powerful, it's not really a player choice anymore. You're like, yeah, I kind of have to roll this because it's really the only one that's viable. Kind of
Right.
And so getting to that first bullet, the big one is like, we just want like more diversity, right? Like more ways to play. So when someone says, oh, what kind of paladin do you play? You have more than like 2 answers, right? You can have, a decent number of things like that.
Right.
The other thing is the fantasy. And so this is a little bit more of a squishy area, right? So when you're like, oh, wouldn't it be really awesome if I could play an assassin and kill demons? Like, okay, yeah, there's no numbers involved. It's a cool thing. Yeah, assassins, ninjas, martial arts. That would be awesome. And you're like, oh, look, I can do that. I'll play a martial art. And then you play it and you're like, well, this isn't as cool as I was hoping it would be, right? And so that's not really a numbers thing. It's not really a like, okay, here's how everything is. It's really more of like you should be able to play a cool fantasy and have it be viable. I think viable is the big word we're really focusing on here because let's be honest, some of the builds, while cool in like a, fantasy novel or dark sim was really cool, but weren't viable, right?
My Inferno
next thing
Sorceress doesn't really.
Well, the other thing is, and I'm going to have to side with you on this one, is like the new Hydras are so cool looking, and I'm like, can I use that more? And
can I just use it, please? I just want it to be viable in some build, somehow.
For the longest time, we didn't have the actual final art. It was just like 3 little cylinders that would come up. And we're like, this is going to be cool one day. And it sure was.
Oh, it's amazing now. Yeah.
The next thing is like casting delays. So really just a lot of the timings, this is like a slippery slope, right? Because if we change timings too much, it starts to not feel the same.
Yeah.
But we also don't play like by putting our AOL disk in the thing and dialing up, right? Like kind of connections work differently, and so
500 free hours. I got plenty of those over here for you if you need them.
I want someone to bring that on Antique Roadshow and just be like, here's my AOL collection. Those would go for auction. Yeah. So it's just kind of a modernization of those types of things, changing things that take a long time, like don't always feel that great and things like that. On tooltips, just the game before didn't always tell you perfectly honest what things were. Also for like a new player, what does this do?
Right.
The tooltip kind of tells me. So those are kind of low-hanging fruit. That was easy fixes for us to do.
Итак, мужики, что получается? Diablo Resurrected рейтинговый сезон будет длиться 4 месяца, ибо 6 месяцев это очень якобы для них долго. Но судя по тому, как ребята обсуждают это в чатике Ютуба, да, и соглашусь с ними, что 4 месяца это довольно-таки крайне мало, потому что многие работают, и не все тратят время на Diablo по 24 часа в сутки, 7 дней в неделю. Поэтому собрать что-то достойное за эти 4 месяца очень-очень-очень будет небольшое количество ребят, которые смогут это добиться.
So the Amazon. So yeah, when we talk about kind of the fantasy and other things like that, melee comes up a couple times in a couple of these classes. But really what we're doing here is like the way that certain synergies worked, they were a little bit restrictive. And so kind of removing some of the skill point synergies, lightning, fury skills. I think you saw a bunch of these ones. But really just like making certain things a little cheaper or kind of around. The passive and magic skills. This was something that like they have good variety, but we just saw opportunity for quality of life things in here. So like radius of inner sight, like just go bump that up. Slow missiles, making them more effective. Really just trying to put more reasons into why you would upgrade slow missile more. And then the disadvantage of like animation lockout for like the dodge and avoid things.
Yes.
So overall, like just trying to make them more viable. It's like this was kind of a clunky thing to use. Let's kind of buff it a little bit. And then when we talk.
Can you talk a little more on the dodge, avoid, evade here, because that's a huge one, right? I mean, that's always been a massive issue for Amazons. It's like, well, I'd like to get a Valkyrie.
Я, конечно, тоже много вообще ничего не понимаю. Дед говорит, я половины не понимаю. Ты молодец, что ты хоть половину понимаешь. Я и половины этого не понимаю, но, судя по всему, вот нам представлена Амазонка и что с ней будет происходить. Пассивные и магические скиллы будут подвержены изменению, я так понимаю. Саппорт, андерфроминг, бау, кросбау, скиллс, что это значит? И мили скиллс, это оружие ближнего боя, понимаем, милишники, да, так называемые милишники. Амазонка будет представлена теперь уже в билде под милишника. Ну, в принципе, о чем уже давным-давно рассказали, и мне кажется, это уже давно не новость.
Just watching yourself die,
Yeah.
and getting stuck in that animation. So
Horrible.
it's little tweaks like that. Again, not necessarily trying to change the whole ability or anything, but really just tweaking, you know, some of the things that are frustrating for players over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, some other cool things that I can think of for Amazon would be, you know, casting delays, right? Rob touched on casting delays in our last slide.
Yep.
These work fantastic with Valkyries, right? You're not sitting there
6
seconds worth. Yeah, exactly. 6 seconds worth of Valkyries and you can't do anything afterwards, right? It just makes sense to take that out. And, you know, when it comes down to casting delays, we're thinking on an individual skill basis, right? It's not
Yeah.
this blanket change to casting delays. So Valkyries are huge. And then, you know, when it comes down to the underperforming bow and crossbow skills, you know, we all know that exploding arrow and immolation arrow are massive early
Yeah.
game, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't
yeah.
need a boost by any means whatsoever. But in the later game, you know, we adjusted that scaling. So it's not necessarily just a DPS, you know, numbers bump.
Mhm.
It just really depends on the scaling of how many points you put into that ability. So
Okay.
super cool stuff coming from the Amazon.
Nice. That sounds good. What other, if we can go back real fast to that, are there any other looks into the bow and crossbow skills, such as like early game physical damage, stuff to do with the, you know, mana cost of cold skills, even like early game cold arrow, things like that? Or is right now
Yeah.
just the focus kind of over on the fire and stuff?
No, that's a good point. So let me think here for a second. So let's use like cold arrow for an example. Cold arrow, when you slam enough stats into it, I think it's around like 12 or so. The mana cost is massive,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's
huge, yeah.
almost unusable at that point. So we did make some changes in the scaling to actually bring down the mana cost
Okay,
while
nice.
also bringing the damage up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Awesome.
Sweet. Okay, so with the assassin, this was kind of talked about before, like martial arts should be a fantasy that's totally viable. And so this one, we're kind of making a change with having finishing moves. So the martial arts skill now only consumes 1 of each charge at a time instead of 3 all at once. Hopefully this will be a little bit smoother in combat. So you're kind of like maintaining and spending more charges. We also went up the attack rating for charge up skills and made it easier to gain a charge. And then we did up the damage payoff for some of the lesser used finishing moves too.
Yeah, this is a huge change actually.
Yeah.
I love a martial arts assassin. I
Yeah.
tried to make this viable. I think there's only one viable martial arts assassin build in the whole game that you could realistically play, right? But
Yeah,
if you
there's not a lot with it. There's
Right, it's
some
not a
with
lot.
some PvP stuff you can do,
Right.
but you know.
Right. This
Yeah.
is a huge change that we made.
Yeah.
So instead of going back to like, you know, use Phoenix Strike as an example.
Yeah.
You know, normally before you'd have to charge up the three charges. You know, you hit one ability and a Chaos Ice Bolt comes out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. You're down to 1. You know, you're down to 0
Zero.
charges.
Yeah, you lose
right?
all your charges and
Right, exactly. So now there's at least some gameplay. So you charge up to 3, you slam your Chaos Ice Bolt, and now you're right back down to Chain Lightning. And then you can use a Chain Lightning, and then you can charge right back up. It just gives the build so much more playability, so much more gameplay than just a builder and spender.
Right. Okay, I like that a lot. Is there any thought into low-level dueling with this and effects with that? Because I know, like, at least from my personal experience, getting wiped by level 9 assassins murdering me was always rough. And
Yeah, that's a good one.
you know, is there gonna be something with that? Like just I don't know, looking at it.
Yeah. This came up. This is really going to come down to our PTR, realistically, right? Like
Okay.
we can play it internally all we want and get a few eyes on it, but the PTR is going to be massive to see some of these PvP scenarios, especially like you just said, like the lower level PvP scenarios.
Yeah.
Huge amount of feedback there would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that I didn't even mention, and we'll get into it later on, but a lot of these builds will also work with the new rune words, right? And the other changes that are coming, because we all know it's not just your build that makes your character. So you'll see some other synergies with that as well. For Shadow, Shadow, pretty much that's pretty widely used and effective. We didn't do a ton of changes there, mostly some quality of life changes with like the tooltip, as well as some buff duration consistency and like casting delay changes. So just a little bit of cleanup, but that was not the area where we're like, man, we got to fix this part of the assassin.
Right.
And then kind of getting to traps. When it came to the trap skills, we saw that Death Sentry was getting a lot of usage, but we felt that kind of more could be done with the rest of the trap skills. So lightning and fire traps, we freed up synergies, reliance on Death Sentry to give more build possibilities elsewhere. Also, fire traps are receiving damage, synergy improvements to make them more effective at higher difficulty. Kind of another one of those areas where it's like, it was good early, but it kind of peters out.
Right, yeah, you don't really run fire traps past, late nightmare, I'd say.
Yep, nightmare.
And then each of the blade skills are receiving a handful of improvements to make them more viable, just to make them...
Can you talk more on that? Because I'm a lover of the blade. Well, that makes me sound like some... Alright. I love the blade assassin and the blade skills, but they're one of the, like, most underutilized, just like the weakest, simplest, right? It's like, I feel like so many people would love to hear and know, how can we make blade skills? How are we making them actually viable? No, I wasn't studying the blade Gosh dang it. That's not what I was going for.
If you were studying the mastery of the blades,
Oh god.
As one may say,
Oh lord.
we did a couple things. So one we gave more synergies.
Okay.
Right. So the more synergies, the more damage it's going to do. But also, again, going back to that casting delay, right? You throw out a Shadow Master, you throw out a Shadow Warrior, you no longer have to wait your 6 seconds to throw up your Blade Sentinel and rock out some damage.
Okay. Nice.
So I think between those 3 things, synergies, little buff on the damage, and casting delay, we think it'll put it into a good place. But again, feedback.
Yeah,
Tell us
PTR.
we're wrong, but I think it's pretty solid.
Now, I do have a question here for PTR overall, because some of these are things like low-level duel and stuff like that. Some of this might be like endgame builds, all of these things. What are we looking for in terms of the PTR for like leveling all of this? Is it going to be just like a standard, kind of like a standard ladder start and you just go and whatever? Will you be able to just generate items or characters or anything like that? I mean, how is this going to exist so we can get all this testing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if I had my way right now, we'd probably do it in a couple stages, right?
Okay.
So we would have your just level 1 and level up as you go and go through that normal progression experience. Obviously, it's going to take a long time for people to get to a certain point,
Right.
but that's where we drop in template characters,
Okay.
right? So if we have, let's say, level 99 template characters, you can change around your stats whenever you wish, play around with different scenarios. I think that'd be the best. We're still going through what's going to go into the PTR and when it's going to go in or how it's going to be delivered. But, if we go back to Diablo 3, we have an NPC in there that just provides you with items so you can have, a fun of the mill of what you want to test. So maybe something like that, not promising anything, but,
Can that
certainly
NPC be
certainly
named
talking
Mr.
about it.
Llama?
Right.
No.
Settle down. Settle down, Alex.
I will note, in terms of PTR, we do plan on actually having PTR go a little bit prior to the 2.4 testing stuff as well, just because we are, like we said in earlier blog posts, we do plan on doing some testing on some new database changes and so forth to improve on some of the server stuff. So people should expect to see that prior to this PTR kicking off with all these changes, but yeah, PTR will exist in that form prior to this.
Do we have an exact date set for this yet, or is it still?
No.
Not as of yet. Not as of yet. What we really wanted to do is we kind of took this in stages, right? So stage 1 was, put out the game, ensure that it wasn't in a super broken state, get the bugs dealt with, the server stability, because the last thing we would want to do is put out a ladder and everything's poor. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is really getting this PTR. We have a PTR for stability coming up server-wise, and then we'll put out the PTR for patch 2.
Perfect. Let's move to Barbarian.
Alrighty. Yeah, and I want to be mindful of your time and give you time for questions, so I might go a little faster, but
sorry,
I don't want to rush anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Barb. Barb is great, but like Yodel Barbs, we thought they would be cool. So we've definitely kind of done some consistent quality of life there. Warcry, we approved its effectiveness once again at higher levels to promote more of that. We wanted to give more reason to spend points on some of the lesser things such as Find Potion and Grim Ward. Just like the things that the Barbarian has, like use them.
Yeah.
We have gone in and improved Leap. So Leap, we made them move a lot faster, so they kind of get less awkward. Leap was one of the things, but when we actually made the 3D version of it and we saw how the Leap was, we're like, this gets really janky. Yeah. So hopefully you can get more use out of Leap. Not that Leap is underused, but it's just could be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Actually, specifically more Leap attack if you want to get more use out of. And its damage improvements. Berserk synergy with Shout is changing to battle orders because the defense loss from the skill kind of contradicts the use of Shout. And then this should allow Berserk to share potential skill point build paths from Concentrate. And then Throw Barbs. Throw Barbs is a fantasy we wanted to make more viable, so we added Pierce chance to Throwing Mastery so that Barbarians have improved viability, when you kind of fight groups of enemies.
Yeah.
That's how Pierce works.
Yep.
Double Throw now has baseline damage to increase to make it more effective, and also so it's not just purely relying on synergies for damage. And then lastly, Frenzy is getting a new synergy from the lesser used increased stamina skill to give more reasons to kind of invest points there and add some more build diversity.
I've never put more than 1 point in increased stamina.
No one
in my
else
life.
has either.
I don't think there has ever been a person that has put 2 points in that, except by
Call
mistake.
that a 1 point wonder.
Increased stamina. Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any look at maybe some of the earlier Melee game, I mean Melee overall, but Barbarian is kind of one of the main guys, right? Because he doesn't have kind of those other skills that he can fall on early on for damage besides Melee. Is there any look at that? I mean, once again, when you talk about balance, I'm still on the same page of I don't want everything to be up here, right? Barbarian's kind of a harder playthrough of the game, but just some question on that.
Yeah. I mean, as of right now, like we think between the buff to Warcry, right? So better damage scaling, adding more mechanics to Grim Ward. It's a little bit of that earlier game. Grim Ward specifically, right? Slow enemies, decrease enemies' physical resistance, allowing you to do more damage.
That one is definitely interesting.
Yeah, super cool on that one. Yeah, we didn't necessarily want to rework, Melee completely,
right?
Straight out of the gate, right? In the first set of balance changes.
Yeah.
So something we could probably do in the future, but again, It's really just trying to healing up, the underused skills as of right now.
Okay.
And then based off feedback, if Barbarian's still lacking, in that sort of like level 1 to 20 game,
Yeah.
let us know. Yeah.
And then one more question, because everybody is spamming it. Whirlwind. Is there a change or something coming to Whirlwind here? Because it feels like you go back to like 1.0 classic Whirlwind where you hit every single frame and it's just dominant, and then you go to today's Whirlwind and it's kind of super underwhelming until you're super geared at the very end. Is there some balance there at all?
So with Whirlwind is it's a very unique ability in that it doesn't really work how you might expect it to work. In that you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to click here and I'm going to and depending on how far away it is, and so like if you look at a more modern kind of how a Whirlwind plays, there's lots of options out there. There's lots of ways to change Whirlwind, but it starts getting into like fundamentally changing what the move does, and it's not just tweaking numbers. And that's where it's kind of like, okay, right now we don't want to be remaking a move, right? And so that's not to say we can't go tune some numbers, tweak some, the things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it would, I'm not going to say it's a table flip, but it would be a big change to really start changing all of the things that, at least where I would start with Whirlwind for how it works.
Okay. That's fair.
So Druid. So Druid's one that I think you'll definitely feel the change of casting delay, like with the casting delay changes. Druid fire skills are hopefully going to be more widely used. In addition, we're improving the physical damage scaling for certain fire to make it more reliable. Just because physical is a little bit more of a guarantee.
Yeah.
We felt that Arctic Blast was lacking skill, and we wanted to improve that, so we increased its damage scaling. Reduced the synergy requirements to free up some more skill points, and kind of just improve the player controls to allow freer form targeting. In addition, we wanted to complement the Arctic Blast changes with improvements to Twister to add more build possibilities. And then lastly, we're allowing shapeshift forms to cast each of the elemental buffs, so you don't have to like switch, cast, switch, just to keep buffs active.
That's nice.
Yeah, it should change how you play him, maybe just a bit. Werewolf skills are receiving attack rating improvements to help Werewolf for melee gameplay. Fire Claws, we wanted to reduce the heavy skill point cost for synergies to open up more build possibilities. Werebear is also receiving damage improvements to make them just, once again, kind of viable at higher difficulty. So you kind of see a trend. There's a handful of these things that are like, they were good in the early game, and then
they fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we wanted to make make less viable summons more viable. So there's lots of Druid summons that just could be better, all around. So in general, all summons will no longer have hidden randomized health values. So that's nice. I'm
not sure a lot of people knew that, but when you summoned one of your summons, it got a random health value within a range, and you had no clue to tell what it had.
You might have that weak one that you kind of pulled from the back of your pocket. And then this way the tooltip can more properly and accurate. So summons, it's just a little bit more consistency. I mean, we all love RNG. That's kind of what the game is based around. But Ravens are getting big changes to help them function more like a spell-like skill for summoning druids to use. This also includes damage scaling buffs and new synergies from other summons to fuel their damage at higher levels. Wolves are getting improvements to give them more of an identity as damage-dealing summons and more reasons to choose which summon to use. The spirit summons are receiving a physical damage resist change within each difficulty to make them survive more consistently. Spirit Barbs is receiving Thorns damage improvements to improve Thorns. I think we talk about Thorns a little bit more in later slides too. to improve thorns as a more reliable source of damage. And then lastly, each of the creeper summons are receiving improvements to give more reason to spend points for each of them, and then have them perform better at higher difficulties.
Nice.
Yeah. I think if we look over all the classes that we revisited, I think Druid is probably the one that is the most hype and the most changed.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, you make a Druid, you make a Hurricane Druid, and you call it a day, and you're like, okay, here we go. But you know, with the synergy change, the Arctic Blast, you know, all the synergies going into Twister to make Twister better. You don't have to go all the way down to Hurricane, you know, just to make Arctic Blast better, because that didn't make any sense.
Right.
Fire Claws, I think, is going to be a massive change. Fire Claws is one of the largest abilities that melee druids can you know, use to do some damage, pump some damage, and then if you're
But you had to get fissure.
But you had to get fissure, right? Exactly. You had to get
dumping all
so
these
many
points.
different synergies to pump this thing up that it didn't make much sense.
Yeah.
And then going back to like the fantasy of stuff and bringing up that thematical, hey, I want to play a summoning druid, right? We just wanted to bring more identity, right, to some of these lesser summons, right? Like dire wolves versus spirit wolves, you know, better health, better damage scaling, you know, but also, if folks didn't know, pretty sure spirit wolves actually now have a cold damage on their melee instead of physical damage. So little bit of differences there, just to bump the damage up.
Now, is there any chance that we can summon multiple of these at the same time? Yeah. Is this something that maybe coming down the line, if we all complain about it enough or something, can happen?
I mean, once again, PTR is a great place to share that feedback. I mean, it's nothing is off the table, right? It just it will, you know, have significant ramifications kind of across the whole, you know, class, as well as we then scare our engineers to be like, you can summon all your animals all at once. They're just models and polys. Sure.
Yeah, the Necro already does it, you know.
Yeah, I know. Because skeletons are known for the amount of polys they take up.
Короче, мужики, это все, конечно, прекрасно, и то, что они там обсуждают, все эти апы и прочее, я ничего не понимаю. Некоторые из вас, конечно же, в английском намного сильнее, чем я, поэтому какая-то частичка информации до вас доносится, и через вас я уже, как говорится, немножко понимаю. Я так понимаю, что Друлю там будут повышено огонь, Друлю будут повышены его самоны, которые они его сопровождать будут, те же волки, да, вороны и прочая лабудень. Лоза абсолютно, которую сейчас никто не юзает. Вот, сейчас они говорят по поводу некроманта, но об этом всем Яков, по-моему, уже давным-давно рассказал, еще с самого утра. Я посмотрел его видосики, он наглядно показал на скиллах, да, на скиллах открывал скиллы персонажей и показал, что кто нуждается в доработке. И я так понимаю, все то, что Яков уже рассказал, они про это и говорят. Меня другое волнует. Не мы должны их стрим смотреть, они должны нас смотреть стрим. Они должны смотреть наш стрим и вот объясните мне, какого хрена я вижу вот этот вот мутный бриллиант и надколотый бриллиант. Вместо какого-нибудь там лика Андариэля или того же Грифона. Они сказали, что будут таптул в рот айменами топовыми рунами. Да это понятно было, это мы и без них знаем. Так, лучше завтра готовое посмотреть. 2 часа эту ерунду смотреть. Я с тобой полностью согласен, дед, поэтому я отрубаю. Гавар предлагает стать друзьями. Гавар, а мы что, не друзья были до этого? Ты меня исключил из друзей, удалил. В общем, нам понятно, что ничего не понятно. В принципе, все это дело давным-давно будет уже решено и известно. Поэтому давайте, наверное, на этом и остановимся. В общем. 17 тысяч зрителей. американского сообщества, да, или англоязычного сообщества смотрят сейчас этот стрим. Кто-то спамит про акт 6, типа давайте нам акт 6 и прочее, прочее, прочее. В общем, пускай профессионалы-переводчики разработают нам и покажут. Я тут в этом не понимаю, поэтому умный вид делать не хочу. Короче, смотрел КТА, но такое не очень. 6.3.3. Ну почему не очень? В принципе, средняя КТА довольно-таки нормально. Хорошо себя будешь чувствовать, братка. У меня КТА, смотри. Я, кстати, тоже про КТА забыл. У меня 4.1.2. 4.1.2. И нормально я себя с ним чухаю. Нормально я себя с ним чухаю. Все у меня хорошо. Все у меня хорошо. 1800 хп. Для сорки это с головой хватает. У Мерка тут сколько хп? 3-4... 1900 здоровья. Подожди, он бафнулся, кота? Бафнулся. Чё Мерка так мало здоровья? 1900 всего. А сколько у меня было скилл-поинтов? База выходного всего 22, да? А зачем по 3 раза юзать, я не знаю. Так прикольней. Так прикольней. Я видел, что все по 3 раза юзали. Так прикольнее. Вообще одного раза достаточно. Один раз бафаешь. И один раз бафаешь. И все. А это просто оно выглядит прикольно. Так, знаешь, жестко, жестко прям. Уф, уф, уф. Акт 6 это уже в D4 будет, понятно. Короче, ну, я побегал под ихние разговорчики. В общем, ни о чем, мужики. Тимура, здравствуй, братка. Тул в рот АМН нам положили, больше никаких. Больше никаких. А это просто оно выглядит прикольно. Так, знаешь, жестко, жестко прям. Уф, уф, уф. Это я себя, если что, послушал. Потому что хотелось понимать. Или у меня нормально с микрофоном. На совет сходить. Кстати, да. Кстати, да, по поводу совета хотел Мерка своего проверить уже в лике Андариэль и с рункой Рау в ней. Потому что у меня Мерк эфирным ликом Андариэля. И в нее вставил рунку Рау за счет того, чтобы компенсировать сопротивление. Ну, давай пойдем посмотрим. Привет, что за шмот, что за аура? Аура это из оружия Call to Arms. Призыв к оружию. Ну, как у варвара. Варваросовские крики. Слушай, нормально так себя этот Мерк почувствовал. Не так уж ему и больно было. Несмотря на то, что без масла. Все хорошо, все нормально, все на своих местах, мужики. Все на своих местах, все те же руны, все на месте. Никуда ничего не дели. Все на месте, камушки падают. Допилил я свою сорку, понял, погонял пару дней по фарму, слышал за апгрейд. Думаю, может начать пить лимонад. Вот именно что. Можно начинать пить. Пока не выйдет, да? Пока не выйдет. Так. Случайно Гавар удалил, говорит. Я понял. Случайно, бывает. Так, что у нас тут? На совет сходили. На Диабло сходили, на Бала сходили, на совет сходили. Пойдем на Энди сходим. На Мефисто совет пойти. А я их уже убил. Чтобы вы понимали, да? Что у нас по поводу всякого дропа и фарма. Кстати, я, по-моему, там потише сделал. Микшер громкости сейчас, мужики. Не знаю, вам слышно? Слышно, не слышно? Первый раз выбил безрукавку, погибель гладиатора, хрена мне 1335 деф. А плохая дед Сварог. Ну как, Рунворд лучше намного. Да, дефа в ней много, но не в дефе дело. У нее параметры не имбовые. Слушай, сколько раз она у меня была на стримах, это погибель. Громко? А, да, громко. Сори. Я ж накручивал тут звуки, поправлял. Простите, мужики, простите.
Здравствуй.
Я же звуки поправлял и это. Накрутил малех. Стена безглазых. 20 к ПКРу. Заморозить нельзя в этой броне, на первое время пойдет. Но если совсем ничего нету, но я думаю, дед, у тебя на мерке уже должно быть 2 фортитуды, 3 энигмы, как минимум. По любасу. По любасу 2 фортитуды, 3 энигмы. Ни хрена не громко, ты самый тихий стример в мире, у меня звук из-за тебя на полной, а игра на минимум. Да нет, тут у меня звуки просто были накручены, чуть-чуть переделаны, поэтому... Возможно, было так, что громко. А мне там надо еще правки в микрофон внести. Что-то мне не нравится, как сейчас настроен микро. Наверное, глухо. Надо высоких частот добавить просто. У меня мерк в энигме гоняет. Мажор, мажор. Осуждаю мерка в энигме, осуждаю. А у меня кошка мурлыкает в микрофон, да? Диабло понравилось фармить на Блиссорке. Ну, как тебе сказать, фармить на Блиссорке? Не пофармишь ты на чистой Blizzard. Тебе нужна двухстихийка. Как ты с иммунами будешь справляться? Я только что пробежался по яме, все сдохли, но есть недостаток, надо бежать обратно, чтобы собрать лут. Так. А кем пробежался Марат Залески? А, ты в своей мечте, в дриме пробежался по яме. Пойдем пробежимся-ка тоже по яме. Максим, приветствую тебя, бро.
Бастион Андрея.
Короче, все умерли, да? А тебе только собирай лут.
Мне нужна мана.
А, я имел в виду графиню все 5 этажей. Так и чё, выпало там что-нибудь? А, мерк иммунов убивает. Ну тогда да. Мне кажется, мерк все равно медленнее иммунов убивает, чем ты сам. Допустим, вот у меня двухстихийка. Я думаю, что я быстрее убиваю мобов, чем будет это делать мой мерк. Потому что мерк убивает поодиночке, а ты бьешь по площади.
Я перегружена.
Особенно в яме тут же 50 на 50 всех, понимаешь? Меня напали с КТА, выбери 2900 хп. У меня 2700. Не поверишь, мимо пула пробежал. Осуждаю, мимо пула пробегать нельзя, нельзя. Нельзя. Надо внимательно смотреть под ноги. Да мало ли так. Сегодня мимо пула пробежишь, завтра мимо Бэра пробежишь.
Я перегружена.
До первого нормрона после джа прошло 8 дней. И еще 38 до следующей. Так. У меня в яме вообще ничего. Просто ничего. Просто ничего. Просто ничего. 3 высокоуровневые руны. Нихуя. Даже не знаю. Ладно, мужики, будем отправляться отдыхать. Будем ждать информацию завтра уже от гугла переводчика. Да, ребята переведут, расскажут, покажут. Метеор не быстро так-то закидывает, пока карта перезарядится, зато фаербол очень хорошо, быстро стреляет, как пулемет, блин. Как пулемет. Так, давай еще в Magic сходим. Не знаю, нет смысла фармить сегодня уже. Никто ничего не дает, никому ничего не надо. Метеорит нужен на Нихлотака и на Шенка, на остальных он не нужен. Прошло 8 дней, а мы только руну пул выбили, да? Уже и Mosquito Rush, радость, она даже теперь реже падает. А все редко падает. Я вот вообще не вижу дропа от слова совсем. Я не знаю, с чем. Ладно, мужики. Спасибо всем большое за сегодняшний день. За ламповое общение, атмосферу, за взбудораженное сообществом разработчики компании Blizzard, да, потеребонькали они наши нервы, пощекотали. Сейчас все массово бегут продавать свои шмотки по дешевке, поэтому кто-то это все забирает, естественно. Посмотрим, что будет, посмотрим, какую информацию нам принесут более профессиональные блогеры в плане понимания этой игры. То, что они там накопают крохи информации и выложат уже для нас русскоязычного сегмента игры Diablo. Желаю вам всем доброй ночи, приятного отдыха. Завтра у нас... какой день завтра? Я вообще не знаю, какие дни. Сегодня, завтра, послезавтра, четверг. Четверг сегодня, завтра пятница. И Семен Слепаков будет в пятницу в говно. Так, Марат Залезский, не ухожу, бро. Не ухожу, не ухожу. Так, Марат Залезский... Ой. Семен Слепаков будет в пятницу в говно, а в понедельник он будет огурцом. Так. Что у нас тут? Баночки выложим. У меня дежурка. Саш, я тебе желаю хорошего дежурства. Надеюсь, это дежурство у тебя по графику, а не из-за того, что ты накосячил. Котеечка моя тут мяукает, бедолага.
Ты баклажан. Спасибо тебе, бро, за 500+, от души.
Чтоб тебе беры снились.
Спасибо большое, Марат Залезский. Они меня не только снятся, я их уже это, как говорится, они мне мерещатся. Они уже даже не снятся, а уже даже мерещатся. Поэтому тут уже беры, как говорится, в крови, по венам бегут. Уже не кровяные тельца, а кровяные берца. Все, мужики, меня кошка тоже зовет. Обнял, приподнял, на место поставил. Спасибо, Марат Залезский, огромное за поддержку. Увидимся с вами уже завтра. Я думаю, что завтра будет лучше, чем вчера. Всем спокойной ночи, приятных снов. С наступающей вас пятницей, господа. Пока.